If you only do the translation, it's usually missing the cultural nuances. And with the localization, you can actually then get more out of it, and they actually the target audience is more like positive towards your message.
Welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, product localization, and global expansion. I'm Katerina from Undertow. We create and manage localization programs for B2B SaaS companies so they can grow globally. Today, our founder Nicola Calabrese will be talking with Charlotte Jaakola, Chief Operating Officer at Advance B2B, Finland's largest B2B marketing agency and one of the leading HubSpot agencies in the region. Charlotte has spent her entire career in B2B marketing and sales, from events to strategy, and now help companies grow internationally through marketing. They will be diving into international expansion and marketing, exploring how to identify the right ICP for new markets, common mistakes companies make when going global, and the balance between translation, localization, and AI in multilingual marketing. And without wasting any time, let's begin.
Hi, Charlotte, and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast. How are you today?
Hi, and thank you for inviting me. I'm good today. What can you say? The sun is shining, it's warm outside, so it's a proper summer day today.
That's good. That's good to hear. And today we're going to talk about international expansion and marketing. But before we jump right into the topic, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a bit what you guys do at Advance B2B?
Yes, definitely. So basically, I've been living and breathing B2B marketing and sales my entire adult life. I started out in B2B events, which was actually a great foundation because you really get to see how businesses connect with each other. After that, I jumped in-house to experience things from the other side, so to say. And in 2018, I made the leap back and joined Advance B2B. And Advance B2B is a strategic B2B marketing agency. And first, I worked there as a marketing strategist and team lead. And I have to say, I loved it and still do. And working as a strategist meant that I get to dive into all these kind of different companies and help them figure out how to grow through marketing. And during the years, I have worn quite a few different hats along the way, and that has kept the things really interesting. So recently, Advance B2B got acquired by Valve, and now we're actually the biggest B2B marketing agency in Finland and one of the leading HubSpot agencies here. So it's been quite a ride the last couple of months, and we're really excited about this new shared journey we're having. And currently, I'm working then as a Chief Operating Officer for our combined company. And this is both challenging and exciting as we figure out then how to make the whole thing work even better together.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a lot of coordination and making things align. But it sounds really exciting, yeah.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And there is coming a lot of new stuff then in autumn that we are preparing for right now.
And as I said, we're going to talk about it today, about international expansion and marketing. And one of the first things that I would like to ask you about is the ideal customer profile, the ICP. Sometimes it can vary significantly between countries. So what steps would you recommend companies take to make sure that they find the ICP for a new market?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And well, if going to the background, I think that one of the biggest mistakes I see existing businesses do is that they assume that the existing ICP will work in the new market. So they take that assumption, and then that usually comes with a huge cost. Of course, you need to keep in mind that the process is very different from companies that are then local or already born global, like SaaS businesses. But as in all new market entries, I would actually start with researching the actual market, like the competitive landscape, market maturity, regulatory differences, and cultural nuances to really understand and profile your ICP. You also need to understand how the internal policy works. So, for example, how do companies make decisions? That might vary really much from different countries. Other things that I often suggest, but some companies oversee, is customer research. This is something that they say that we don't need it. Our sales knows our customers, but actually I think that this is really important to talk with the customers in the actual market you are entering about their challenges, decision-making process, pain points, because that will give you so much insights. So I would actually say that do the research and do it well before jumping over to a new market, because you also need to understand the business culture in the new market. For example, how does relationship building affect if you can sell or not, and these kind of things. So I would start with that.
Well, that's a really good one. And I do see why it might be underestimated. The business culture, especially how it changes, especially in the B2B field. Yeah, how it can affect quite a lot your strategy when you're entering a new market. And you mentioned already a couple of mistakes that sometimes or underestimation that are done. Are there any like common missteps that companies do when entering new markets that come top of your mind?
Yeah, I actually have some of them, what I think. But first of all, it's like the same playbook probably won't work in the new market, especially if you're a regional player and you move next door. So for example, here from Finland, many companies go to Sweden first, and they assume that the culture is pretty much the same, but data tells us that many times, for example, you need much more brand awareness in Sweden than in Finland, and these kind of things. So you a bit like see that, oh, it's our neighbor, then let's go there and everything is fine. But actually you need to still approach it as a new market. So that is at least one thing. The other thing I think that is a misstep is budgeting. Usually international expansion is massively underfunded. Companies think they can, so to say, survive with the same budget in the new region or in the new market that they're having in the current one. And I think that this is a huge misstep, that you usually need to have more budget and investment in order to really make it in the new market like faster. So that I would say is a thing also. And then a third thing that I see often is that companies tend to be impatient. They expect like really fast results, and you really need to understand the business and then the market before you can make those fast results. I think that you should always have a plan B also. So your plan A is not working, then you need to think like, okay, how will I pivot it that it actually will? So it's always about the iteration also.
I do agree, like the expecting results right away. Like maybe you spend so much time and resources like building your brand and your presence in a market, going in a new one, expecting to get it like quickly traction is not like a given. You might have sometimes even to start from scratch, as you said. But when you say like plan B, do you mean, for example, like changing the positioning or the way you're communicating, like maybe focusing on different pain points when you move to a different country, or is it something different?
Yeah, I think that yes to all of these. I actually think that when you start in a new market, you have a hypothesis of what will work and what ICP and what messaging you will have that will work. And then when you actually go there and make these kind of small experiments, you will then start to understand, okay, what actually makes this ICP or the target audience then tick, and that you get the audience like coming to you, but also then that you get the right kind of messaging working for them. So I think that here is a really big thing that if you have just only like one way of thinking, then that might actually backfire.
Okay. And in general, when you're entering a market, one of the things is the language. Sometimes you might go with English first, but when you don't use English first, even if you're a global company, you want to use the local language, is like, how do you see the difference between like just translating, let's say, marketing content or localizing, like adapting it as well for the local market? How do you see this difference? And maybe if you can provide some example of previous campaigns that you've done.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that you should primarily go for localization, a translation, if it's a company that actually like has their own language and not use English as their like business language. What we can see nowadays is that, yes, you can really easily translate any website or any content with your own tone of voice, and that's thanks to AI, of course. But if you want better results, then you go for localization. And for example, one concrete example of this is that I'm a Finnish Swede, so I speak fluently Swedish. But if I would go and translate a web page to Swedish, the Swedes would think that this is not that good, like what the heck is this? And actually there you can see the like nuances of the language and in the countries, because for example, I'm a good example of that one. So I can instantly see if a Finnish Swede or a Swede has actually done the translation. And these are the things that we also see with other businesses, that if you only do the translation, it's usually missing the cultural nuances. And with the localization, you can actually then get more out of it. And the target audience is more like positive towards your message.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm thinking as well, like another things that, for example, we saw is sometimes even like changing the testimonials, like get local testimonials, or testimonials that speak to as we were saying before, like specific pain point that are more relevant for that market, like changing that, or the case studies that you have, like you give more relevance to different case studies. That's as well. Yeah, I think it can help.
Yeah, definitely. And then like your point of proofs also need to change, I think, in if you are going to new markets. So for example, for some like big numbers and superlatives like 200% ROI is really working. But for others, it's more about first presenting the case study in detail and giving the results. So the information architecture can actually vary a lot also in different countries. So that's why you need to understand like how do they interpret data and the content that you do.
Yeah, that's a very interesting insight. Yeah. So you have the same information, but just like structured differently. Is that what you mean, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's quite good. Yeah. And when you think as well, like when you enter a new market, like how do you think as well, like market maturity and competition affects it? Like how does make that influence the way you approach the new market?
Yeah, so I always tell customers that you need to understand the market you are entering in order to do the right measures there. It's a really different game if you enter a mature market or an emerging one, like especially in a market where there is established local competitors, you are fighting for market share. So you don't need to usually educate the market that much. But then because the target audience is mostly already understanding the problem, they look for solutions. So you need to understand that, okay, if we are not a local player, how does our solution fit in and how can we actually get that market share? So you need to find that like wedge, and you need to understand why would they switch to your solution. So you really need to understand, are they buying first product or are they or solution, or are they buying like and changing? Because then you need to think about the cost of change. So it's really really important that you understand the market that you're entering.
And how do you think it will change the dynamic? For example, if you're entering a market that is not mature, so like they might not even be aware like that there is a solution like the one that you're offering.
Yeah, well, if there isn't so, then you need to educate them about like that there is this kind of solution. So that's then the first thing that you need to do, because if they have a problem and they are still like weighing like what kind of solutions they can go for, then you need to educate them first about the solution in general and the problem in general. And then you go to your solution, your own. But first they need to have the education of that, oh, they can actually solve their problems like this or like this. So you need to give them options.
So I guess, again, it connects with what you were saying at the beginning, like you have to maybe recalibrate or sometimes like redo some of the things that you don't, like you have to go take some step back and educate, make them aware, like this is something that you have an issue and there's a solution for that. And in another market, maybe you don't need to do that. So you need to calibrate the strategy for and the positioning for every one of them.
Yes, definitely. And this is something that you need to understand. And of course, it's a bit different if you're going from like one market to another, or if you're more global, that you already take this kind of things into consideration when starting your business or starting your SaaS company. But of course, like if you're going from one to another, like from one market to another, then you need to understand how the market works before going there.
And another thing that is important is the brand trust. So what strategies do you think companies can employ to build trust with potential customers who may not be familiar at all with the brand?
Yeah, I think that the first thing is when building trust starts with proof. So use a lot of customer stories, and even better if you have them from the market. If you have also like researched the market and you have actually find possible companies that would be a good fit for your solution, then if your solution offers a pilots or extended trials, then do that, like suggest an exchange for a customer story so that they can use your tool and you get the customer story, because then you have the local customer stories and that will help you move forward. Competitors also follow each other. We need to remember that one. So this is also something that they then start taking you seriously when you have these kind of local stories to share. Another thing I would say is also that it's good to establish partnerships in the new market. So for example, are there communities where people seek for guidance, where your solution might be the answer, or these kind of things? So join these kind of like communities and like really, really try to understand where people seek for advice and seek for help. We had a customer, for example, in Germany, and they partner up with a player there who is already having the credibility. So when they partner up, they got the trust in the market much faster than other companies who just think that they can make them by themselves. And this is also like the German culture is so that you need to have established relationships before like starting selling. So this is one thing, for example, that you can do.
Yeah, and again, that's connecting to what you were saying before. This is makes so much sense. Looking at the customer journey, the whole customer journey is like, how would you recommend maybe trying to, because sometimes it's not always super linear. So how do you recommend maybe mapping the customer journey to make sure there are no gaps or you're meeting the customer needs at every stage? Sorry to interrupt your listening. But do you want to grow your B2B SaaS in international markets? Because every country is different, and what users value in one market doesn't necessarily matter in another one. At Undertow, we help B2B SaaS companies like yours succeed in their international expansion. We create customized localization strategies that address the unique challenges of each market. In this way, you can effectively attract, engage, and convert customers worldwide. Visit undertowlanguages.com to find out more. And now back to the show.
Yeah, I think that you are right about that one, that the customer journey is not linear. It's actually pretty messy nowadays, usually involving also multiple stakeholders who enter the sales journey. In different stages, they come and they go. But I think that the first of all is about the actual customer journey. Like from marketing perspective, many things of the customer journey as awareness, consideration, and decision. But I would like instead to try to think of it from the perspective of the actual like buyer, like the problem in identification, the solution exploration, then the vendor evaluation, and then building like consensus, and then the implementation. So think it from like how your potential customers will buy. And then from there, start mapping out like what kind of information do they need to move forward in your buying journey. And this is again where data and research comes into use. You can interview recent customers about their buying journey and buying triggers, but you can also look at your data that you're having to see like, okay, what kind of actually questions have they had at this stage? What have you been talking about at that stage? What are some, for example, things that you should present to them to get them to move on your journey?
And connected to this, like, what do you think, like, how do you think the decision-making process changes as well? So the buying committee, it can vary quite differently from countries, or what recommendation would you give around this?
Yes, I think that this is also something that you need to take into account, that in some countries and some markets, the buying committee is smaller. It also depends, of course, on your solution. And then in some, they're bigger and they need more like internal approval before moving forward. So you really need to understand like what kind of decision committee do you have in a market and what is the role of everybody, because everybody is not decision makers. Some is also champions, like they can make it or break it, so to say. So you need to understand who has the influence also in the decision making.
So I literally sometimes remapping the, let's say, decision committee in every market.
Yeah, usually we do that with our customers. For example, we have a documented customer journey that everybody understands, like what kind of information that they are seeking, who is actually making in that specific section of the customer journey, also moving the thing forward, so that you really understand who you should influence and when going forward. So I really think that everybody should have this documented, because that also helps to have a shared view on the situation and then the companies and the buying journey.
Yeah, that's a good, I really agree. Like having something that puts like on paper what it is, so everybody is on the same page. Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, you have different expectations as well. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's also like, because usually it's not only sales or not only marketing or not only customer success who is working, but it's all together. So you need to have a shared view internally on what you are trying to do in that new market and why. And that best comes with actually documentation or having these kind of maps out, like shown for everybody and so forth.
Just out of curiosity, how do you map it out? Is it like on let's say something like a Miro, or is it a document like a Google Docs? Or how do you find it's most useful to do it?
Yeah, we usually use Miro for that one. So that's our go-to tool for these kind of things. We have a framework that we use with our customers so that we help them then move forward. And then after that, we can then do different kind of documentations also for that, for specific things. But we always start with first workshopping together, like what it looks like, then the customer journey. Of course, research done first, then comes the mapping. So it's not starting from there, but still like we always use some kind of tool for that one.
Oh, I like that. I like that because it's really visual. You can see that at a glance. Yeah. And we touched briefly upon it before, but what do you like with there's a lot of talk about AI at the moment. So with the rise of AI tools, like how do you think companies should balance the use of AI with the human, let's say, oversights when they localize their marketing content?
Yeah, definitely. I think that you should use AI. Like AI gives you a lot of advantage, and you can ask like different kind of things from also like this proper language usage, and is this kind of terminology they are using in the company or in the country, in the market. But I still see that you always need to have some human looking it over. You can't do it just with AI. I think that we should work together with AI, not just like only putting AI, because then there might be some nuances or some like data that is not correct or some content that is not correct. So always the human touch needs to be there. And also because of your, for example, company's tone of voice or these kind of things, we always need also the human touch there.
And do you see some usage, or do you use it for the research part of things? So let's say before you actually get to the content.
Yeah, definitely. Like, of course, prompting is a really good skill nowadays. So I really suggest like for everybody to learn prompting if you're not done yet. But you can make market research also with AI. You can get a lot of like insights from there, but also like using the data you're having and letting AI map it out like from the data you're already having. So you can do it in actual multiple ways. Me, myself, I have some kind of agents also like doing this work with me so that I don't do it all alone, because like going through a lot of data, that takes a lot of time, and AI does it in a fraction of time. So I really think that you should utilize AI, but you need also to understand what your prompt is and what you ask for the AI, because otherwise you can get like really these kind of things that they can tell to anybody. So it's just like generic, and you really need to understand like what you are searching for.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And I guess like a lot of contextual information that you can add, so it just go dig deeper. And yeah. In the agents you mentioned, are there some solution out of the box, or did you develop that internally?
We have actually developed that internally. We do a lot of AI development internally, and we also have helped then our customers utilize AI. We actually have currently a motion going on internally together, partnered up with Business Finland, from where we got funding. And now we are helping also our customers then utilize AI more in marketing and also sales.
Oh, that's quite interesting and exciting. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I'm really excited about the work and that we have been doing, and also the discussions that we have had with customers, because they also see that they need to find this kind of effectiveness through AI, but they are not sure, for example, where to start, how to get the scalability and so forth. So it's really interesting to see now the journey forward then.
And like, what trends do you see connected to this? What trends do you see in the future regarding to international expansion, marketing, and how companies maybe you think should prepare for these changes? Apart from the things you already said, like learn prompting and maybe start looking into agents if you haven't already.
Yeah, and of course, like start using like agents and agentic AI. So like really thinking about like what AI can bring to you and where you can find the like effectiveness here, because there are so many ways you can use actually AI when going to new markets. You can do the market research, you can do hypothesis testing, and you can do different kind of things, because you can, for example, also create a like own custom bot who is like developed on your ICP information. So then you can like start discussing with that one, like, is the messaging right? And these kind of things. There are so many things you can do. I don't know really where to start, but like this is a really interesting topic. Maybe like a session for its own to say, because there are so many things you can do with AI nowadays, also when going international.
Yeah, and I like the one like having the AI impersonate your ICP and ask them the question like, how do you feel about this? What do you think if you see this kind of content? What's the first thing that comes into your mind? So you see like maybe you need to shift a little bit of focus. So yeah, that's really good, and also like funny to do in a way. It's kind of role playing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit like role play actually, but you can also then find like what like the things that your competitors are not focusing on and these kind of things. Or if you want to make it more funny or more serious, so then you can like take from there some kind of like, or like learn from that also. So I think that is really,
and that's also like how you get out like results that are not like the, let's say, cookie cutter things that if you just put a generic prompt, you get like always the same thing that everybody gets. Yeah. And is there any like advice that you will give to SaaS leaders that are considering their first international expansion? Like what factors do you think they should prioritize when they think about this?
Yeah, so I think that there are actually like 3 things that you should consider. And the first is that, are you really ready for market expansion? Because I see companies go like full force, like let's go to a market. But they don't even really understand why they are doing it and how actually much time and resources it takes. You need to have a clear plan on what you're trying to achieve and in what time frame, and hopefully it's realistic. You also need to understand that if you don't have a plan and if you're doing it wrong, not doing the research and these kind of things, it will drain you with your resources and it will cost hugely. So you really need to understand also the market expansion motion and what that means for your business. The other thing that I think is a great thing is that the SaaS community is really helpful. You can ask for help from founders or seek help and guidance from elsewhere in the SaaS community, because I think this is really strong and really great. community, people want you to succeed. So this is a way also where you can like ask for help and connect with other people inside the community to get validation for your own thoughts on how you are wanting to enter the new market or these kind of things. So I really urge you to talk to other people, not only like think from the internal point of view.
Right. That's some really good advice to close the episode. But before we go, is there any way if people want to learn a bit more what you do or get in touch, any channel that you prefer?
Yeah, definitely. Like, for example, you can easily find me on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty active there, so you can reach out there, or email, Instagram. I'm on many different kind of channels and platforms. And of course, like I said, we are now the biggest B2B marketing agency in Finland. So I really think that if there's something that you want to talk about, we have the right kind of experts also to help you with that one. But I'm really also happy to help if there is some questions that you're having about market expansion.
Well, we're going to put the links in the show notes so everybody can easily access them. Yeah. So thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Undertow. We help B2B SaaS companies grow in any language. Get in touch if you want to know more. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. If you want to support us, remember to give 5 stars to the podcast. See you next time.